just love being here. I love the people, and I want to celebrate that because, a while ago, I decided I really only want to paint stuff that I love because I've only got a short period of time to do this. Unfortunately, we all only have a short period of time. So
Yeah.
you might as well spend your time doing what you love about the people that you love and the people that inspire you. And Uptown New York and New York City generally is that.
That's dope.
It's all love.
Welcome to Uptown Voices. From Harlem to the Heights to the northern tip of Inwood, we're here to celebrate our people and together seek solutions for the difficult issues we're all confronting as neighbors. Regardless of what hood you represent, we share the same goal, creating the best community we can, somewhere to enjoy, where we can build our lives and raise our children. We want to thank 181 Cabrini, located on the corner of 181st Street and Cabrini Boulevard, for its generous support for this podcast.
What up, everyone? It's Lev Black on the Uptown Voices podcast, another episode with my brother Octavio Blanco. And we have a very special guest with us today, artist extraordinaire, a Knicks art influencer, if I could call him that. Just an all-around dope dude, you know what I'm saying? Tom Sanford. Tom, what up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, Led. It's great to see you, Octavio. I'm so happy to be here on Uptown Voices. I've lived up here in the neighborhood for a long time, and now I feel like I'm finally a true resident because I'm on the preeminent Uptown podcast.
Man, that's beautiful, brother. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Tom, I've been a fan of your work for a long time, brother. And it's just so funny because one of the things that I get from your work and from you is community means everything. You know what I'm saying? I see it. Like when I look at your artwork, I'm like, oh, I might not know that person, but I know that person in that picture. You know what I mean? Like, and your artwork just like pops. It really resonates, man. And again, you get this feeling of joy, but also community joy. Like, why is that important to you? Or am I completely off about you and community?
No, you're absolutely right, and I'm very happy that you picked up on that. Like for me, I've lived in New York for most of my life, and for me, New York is my great inspiration. It's not the easiest place to live, but you're never going to be bored here. Like if you can walk down the street and find inspiration for 10 paintings. You know what I mean? Like, and the characters and the people that you meet every day are just what makes this city so electric. Sometimes it's not easy being here. It's expensive. Everything's a little bit more of a pain in the ass than it needs to be, but I would live nowhere else because it's just so invigorating, and particularly uptown. I've lived in Brooklyn a little bit. I lived, for a while, a little bit downtown from here. I'm at 142nd Hamilton Place these days. And I've been in this particular place for 15 years, but there's no other area of the city I want to live in. Because, uptown, at least, certainly north of Morningside Heights, is an actual neighborhood
Right,
where
yep.
you see the same people every day. I live on a block where there's probably more people live on this block than lived in my hometown. And most of them I know. And, like I've raised children here, and, and I know every time they walk the subway, they've got eyes on them, and I just love being here. I love the people, and I want to celebrate that because, a while ago, I decided I really only want to paint stuff that I love because I've only got a short period of time to do this. Unfortunately, we all only have a short period of time. So
Yeah.
you might as well spend your time doing what you love about the people that you love and the people that inspire you. And Uptown New York and New York City generally is that.
That's dope.
It's all love.
Now, like, is there a name for your style of art? What would you call it? Or have you even thought of a name of it yourself?
Well, I sometimes call it like sort of like garish surreal expressionism, pop expressionism maybe. I think that's really the job of potentially someday an art historian, if I'm ever
Mm-hmm.
lucky enough for an art historian to pay me any attention. But but the common denominator of my work is it tends to be paintings of people and places. I think it's pretty pop culture influenced. There's a lot of detail. This stuff is often a little bit kind of um more textured and maybe a little bit more, in a sense, ugly, but I don't think of it as ugly. It's just like more stylized than the real world. Like, because I just think the thing about painting that makes it different from other visual mediums is it takes a long time to make, and people will look at it for a few more seconds than they might look at a photograph. So I want to pack as much information in there as I possibly can, because people have a lot of stuff to look at, and if they happen to look at my stuff, I'm honored. I want to give them a fucking eyeful.
Well,
Yeah.
you definitely do that because it's your stuff is like electric. It like vibrates off
Yeah.
the page. And you have a piece right now in Noma's exhibit called "The Last Slice," I think, right? And it's
Yeah.
like that. It's like so deep, and maybe some people might not even get some other stuff. Tell me more about why is it the last slice, and some of the elements of that.
Yeah, so at the time, I made that painting a little while ago. I think that one might be from 2016 or so. But I was painting I decided to paint still lifes. It was actually around a little after the time I met you, because you came and gave me a beer for my
Yeah, yeah,
99 beers on the wall thing. And so these still lifes came out of a series of paintings where I asked friends and neighbors to bring me beer, and we'd share a beer together, and I'd make a beer painting based on the
Yeah, I
beer. But
remember that.
so on this one, I kind of decided to do a still life that incorporated all of the bad habits that I'd had. I wasn't that bad a kid, but as a kid, a lot of drugs and alcohol, like a lot of young people do, screwing around and wasting time. And so at the time, I thought of it as like kind of like sort of hopefully saying goodbye to all that stuff. Like it was like one piece of pizza in the pizza box. That's the last slice. And there's a sort of an arrangement of all sorts of other kind of empty calories around the pizza. There's some pills and some drugs and some weed, and like I think there's a used condom in there, some ice cream, all sorts of stuff that we probably should go easy on, but we're human beings, and human beings kind of like pleasure. So these things give you pleasure until they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, they can be fraught, right?
Absolutely, a lot of pathos.
Exactly. I love that you say that right now you're only painting things that you love. And I think that's important. But, like all artists, they go through phases, right? There's like the period where you might be doing artwork like you just described. That's a little bit more introspective. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey in your painting, and what's been, if I was to be an art historian, I was going to look at your work, and I wanted to sort of like see Tom's journey, what would I be learning? And then also, you mentioned the youth. Were you aware when you were a young person that art was in your future, or did you have no idea?
Well, I always painted and drew. Particularly, I drew a lot when I was a kid. If you were to ask my dad this question, because I've heard him being asked this question, what he says is like most kids start drawing when they're 3 years old or so. But Tommy, he calls me Tommy. Tommy just kept on going. Most stop when they're about 8, but Tommy just kept on drawing. And so, I think way back what happened for me, and I think this is probably the story for a lot of people who get interested in an art or some sort of skill that's similar to this. I wasn't particularly good at drawing, but when I was in kindergarten, I think it was, there was a class drawing competition, and I happened to win the class drawing competition. Not that my piece was all that great. I do remember it. I drew a parachuter, and the teacher said that I won, and I got some little prize. And so I got the idea in my head that I was pretty good at this and I should probably go with it. And so I just kind of kept on doing it. And it was always sort of my identity in my class. It was like I was the guy who'd make a drawing for a class project, or if someone wanted a drawing something, they might ask me to draw that thing or do a caricature for them. Um, but I didn't really think I'd be an artist because, I grew up in Westchester County, at least for middle school and high school. I lived in England when I was young, until I was 12. But my parents are not English; they're American. My dad was moved there for work. But anyway, when we came back to the States, yeah, I lived in like a pretty kind of conservative, boring Westchester County town. Like basically all the moms and dads there were like doctors or lawyers or bankers, like kind of white collar type people. And so I just kind of figured that's what I was going to do. And I went to college, and I was an economics major initially. But the thing was, I really wasn't interested in it beyond that. I figured that there was a job at the end of the
Right.
rainbow with that kind of major. Little did I realize when I started doing economics, it's a really abstract field, and it's not really finance or business. It's more about behavioral
Theory, yeah.
economics.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was doing, I don't know, econometrics and statistics. And I was a decent math student in high school, but by that point, most of this shit was over my head. And I kind of got by copying homework, that sort of thing. And I wasn't doing very well. But the main reason I wasn't doing very well is I was taking some art classes. I allowed myself to take one art class a semester. And during my junior year, I ran into this art professor, a guy named Archie Rand, who just had a profound effect on me. He immediately realized that I was like doing a lot of extra work in the class, and I was probably spending 40 to 50 hours a week on my art homework, which didn't leave much time for anything else.
Oh, wow.
So he uh kind of inspired me to take art really seriously, and made me aware that it's a possible thing to be an artist. It's not an easy thing, but it's a real and honorable thing to do with your life. And so I kind of decided during his class that's what I wanted to do, and I became an art major with an econ minor. And, it doesn't matter where you go to school, be it Columbia University or, I don't know, like the Maryland Institute of Art or any place. If you get done with school with an art major, you basically have two choices. You're going to flip burgers or you're going to make art, And so I wanted to make art. And so luckily for me, and this was the critical thing in my life as far as having an art career, in my opinion, I was very lucky in that my parents paid for my college. And so I did not have loans to pay back. And that is an immense advantage,
Right, it makes a
because it
big
meant
difference.
that I could do part-time jobs. And back when I got out of college, I moved to Bushwick, Brooklyn, where I shared a loft with a couple other friends. I was paying $450 a month in rent to have to be like living in a loft in Bushwick. Back then, Bushwick was just a bunch of stray
Yeah.
dogs and burned out cars and like street prostitution. It was a pretty
Yeah.
gnarly place. But it was cheap, and I was able to like work 2 or 3 days a week and make enough money to get by. So that's my full disclosure. I was very privileged to not have to pay for my college. I did have to pay for my graduate school, but luckily for me, I got pretty smart and decided to go to Hunter. And Hunter was the best deal in education. I was able to go to Hunter and get a free studio, or as part of the tuition. But my tuition was $1,100 a semester, so that meant
Wow.
$1,100 for 6 months of studio, which was the cheapest studio in New York City.
Right.
And so that was another critical key thing. And it gave me enough time to do jobs that would help me with my art. Like what I was doing to make money was mainly working for artists, doing like odd jobs for them and helping with their paintings a little bit, but more just like kind of doing gopher kind of shit, like procuring marijuana for an artist, like as my job, stuff like that.
That's hilarious.
So that's kind of what I was sort of the beginning of my journey, and this isn't really addressing my work, but I do want to say one thing. When I was in that led me kind of to like living uptown eventually. When I was in college, I needed a summer job because I needed spending money because there was beer to be bought and things like that, and so my roommate in college's father worked for Anheuser-Busch, and he was able to get me and my roommate Ted jobs on Anheuser-Busch delivery trucks. And I was on the Uptown route where we did Washington Heights, Inwood, and basically just Washington Heights and Inwood. And so I got really familiar with northern Manhattan and learned a lot and just like fell in love with the energy and vibe of the neighborhood, because the guys who were the drivers, I was kind of like the stock boy essentially. I would put the beer on the hand truck and bring it into the bodega or the bar or whatever the case may be. And so I kind of learned a lot about bodega culture in Uptown Manhattan. I could pick out a bodega that mainly sold drugs or whatever. I was taught by the drivers, like you look at the Goya cans. If those labels are faded, they are not selling them.
Right.
How much dust is on that shelf?
A drug spot.
Yep.
So I learned a lot. But anyway, I think, and if I'm being too long-winded,
no, you're good.
Kind of go.
You're
like
good.
this.
You're good. This is fascinating. Go ahead, keep going, brother.
This is really interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I got out of college, and I needed something to make art about, and I knew that it was important for a young artist to make work that was kind of controversial, touch on taboos, to get people interested in the work, and so. What I realized at that time, and this was like the late 90s, early 2000s, and I think I was exactly correct that like the biggest issue and the most sort of important cultural force in my life and my country's life was race. Because I grew up in the suburbs, but I was a big fan of hip hop music. I also like rock and roll and punk rock and all that shit too. But like I identified that what was cool in our culture was not being made in Bronxville, New York. It was being made here. And it was being made by, brown kids, not by white kids. And I loved hip hop, and I knew that like this music was really cool. And so I wanted to make work about my relationship to hip hop music. Cause like I was, by my nature, but because of where I came from and my race, I was sort of an outsider, And so I wanted to make identity art essentially about being a white kid who venerated hip hop music and realized that the culture that I was being sold through MTV was kind of something that was being taken from certain neighborhoods and getting packaged by MTV and in a sort of unconscientious, unscrupulous way and sold to me. And so what I started doing, and I'll send you images of this stuff, guys, because I know you wanted some images to put up on the screen.
Yeah.
I started making like what looked like kind of Renaissance paintings, but they were of sort of hip hop current events. I made a series of paintings about the hip hop revenge killings of the mid 90s. And yesterday I was watching the P. Diddy documentary.
The Reckoning.
Yeah,
wow.
I saw that
getting
too.
all sorts
The
of
Reckoning.
new information
Wow.
that would have been useful in these paintings. But like I did a painting of like Tupac getting shot in Las Vegas, but it was based on a Roger van der Weyden, who's like a Northern Renaissance painter from like the 16th century, like a version of one of his famous paintings. But I painted it as like Tupac getting shot, and like he's sort of splayed out on the hood of a I guess it was a Mercedes or BMW 500 series or something that he got shot in, and Suge Knight's there and Snoop
and a lot of those Renaissance paintings. A lot of those Renaissance paintings are very violent. Like they're like those Renaissance paintings. If you, we got the cloisters right up here. If you go into the cloisters and you see some of these paintings, it's all about stabbing and death and beheadings, and it's really violent stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah, the world was a lot more violent back then, believe it or not, I think.
Maybe.
um,
Maybe. I don't
but so I started making these paintings. I was making like icon paintings of rappers. Like maybe I do an icon painting of Jay-Z or Biggie or whoever, I was interested in the time. But like, so I tried to make them as like close as I could to in a Renaissance style, but I couldn't escape my own hands. So they always had a kind of a slightly cartoonish affect to them. But to me, they were about the subject matter, but my identity was the critical part of the work, because it was sort of a taboo for a white kid like myself to be depicting people of color in art, particularly within the art world. I don't think that hip hop fans really cared about that because over time, I
Right.
started to get a little bit notable for this. And the reason I got notable was after if I've been doing this for a little while, I sort of wanted to raise the stakes. And so I decided around the 7-year anniversary of Tupac's death that I would do a project. And I was in graduate school at the time, and kind of conceptual art was something that a lot of people were doing. So I thought I would do a kind of conceptual project where I would try to turn myself into Tupac. And I would do this in very superficial manner. I decided I was going to take a couple of months leading up to the 7-year anniversary of Tupac's death. And, a week before he died, of course, he was shooting. And I would try to make myself like Tupac in some very superficial ways. So I started to exercise a lot, and I was trying to lose weight. I probably was about 190 pounds when I started this, but on Tupac's driver's license, it said he was 153 pounds. So I wanted to get down to 153 pounds.
Wow.
And I got some piercings, like nose piercing and ear piercings, like the same ones he had. I started to do some kind of sort of meaningless daily rituals. Like I would drink some Hennessy, I would smoke some weed, because like these were two things Tupac liked to do. Tupac's favorite food was buffalo chicken wings, so I'd eat some chicken every day. Obviously like sort of stereotypical and kind of racially coded things, but like the point was to like try to emulate my hero. And in actuality, I was more of a Biggie guy, being like an East Coast guy, but I felt like Tupac was much more iconic visually.
Right.
And so I started to do things like, get tattoos. And I had a blog where I was writing about being Tom Pock, this like sort of white version of Tupac.
Tom Pock is hilarious.
Oh yeah, thanks. And the funny thing about it was back then, this was in 2003, the internet was not as big as it is now. And so I had this blog called Thug for Life. And if you Googled Tupac back then, you would come up with me on the second page of Google results.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And of course, when fans of Tupac would do that and they'd find me, they'd be upset because I wasn't what they were looking for. And in fact, I look like this white rap carpetbagger. I recorded a version of Hail Mary, at a friend's recording studio.
That's hilarious.
And eventually I started to be the media kind of picked up on me. Like NPR sent Madeline Brand to interview me, and then I end up on MTV with Sway, and I was
What?
on the cover of the LA Times, all sorts of shit. Because and my theory on it was like back then there was this whole sort of like group of TV shows like where they on like MTV and VH1 where people would be emulating and trying to transform themselves into stars that they worshipped, and I kind of fit into that. But and I was approached by VH1, I think it was, about being on one of these things. But as soon as they talked to me, they realized that there was like a political agenda in my thing.
Right.
Because like what I was trying to do was kind of trying to sort of fail horribly. Like when people would find me, they would criticize the project, and all their criticisms were right on. Like they would say, you could never walk a mile in Tupac's shoes. If you ended up in Clinton Correctional, you get killed. And that's true. I was a obviously a fake gangster, and the issue of me being white, of course I like this was the
That was
issue,
the
like
point. Yeah.
I and so, because my feeling was that while what I was doing could be conceived as being racist, it was coming from a sincere interest in the culture, and I was trying to get my head around these guys that I worshipped, but I ended up looking like a skinhead from American History X. I'm covered
Right.
in like these like kind of bad versions of Tupac's tattoos, and I got a shaved head. I look like freaking Ed Norton,
Eh,
and but that was the point,
Yeah.
like
yeah.
by trying to be kind of like be a wigger, I was doing something that could come off as very, very racist, and so it was about this tension and this problem we have in our society, and my attempt to in a very ignorant way try to, be involved in this culture that I loved. And I do think that while, white kids in the suburbs who do dumb shit like drink 40s like I used to do when I was a kid, and like, maybe talk in Ebonics a little bit. I didn't do that too much. I wasn't that ignorant. But they actually in the fullness of time, they actually help a small bit of healing. Like, I don't think we have Barack Obama without Tupac Shakur, because I think that, like for me, I really didn't know people of color when I was in high school, but I learned about, I learned about Harlem from like Big L songs,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
and it's not really a true representation of what's going on here, but it made me aware that there's this place that has such a rich culture, and it made me interested. I've, I chose to move here and raise my children here, and my children are certainly not as stupid as I was. Like, they have all sorts of different, friends from different places, different cultures, different races, different ethnicities. And I think it takes generations to heal these wounds.
And they're not total outsiders in the same way that you must have felt when you basically transplanted yourself here. You must have felt like a complete outsider. And it's, wow, you know what? It is hilarious when you describe the things that you were doing. They're fucking funny. But it's also like really, really deep when you actually put your mind to thinking about what you were trying to say, and you're basically putting up a mirror on society, and kind of like looking at, like, you're playing with this idea that there's love for the art, and then there's also cultural appropriation. And when does love for the art and prevail over like the cultural appropriation? And you did that in such an imaginative way. And I also should commend you, because one of the big complaints amongst people in the arts is that artists who are talented usually end up wasting their talents doing commercials and doing things, doing a lot of, like, Coke commercials and this and that. Not to say there's anything wrong with like earning a buck, which is important, but you actually have been, working with these ideas, and I think it's so important to tell the audience why ideas like this should be valued. I certainly do value them.
Well, I really appreciate your generous evaluation of my work, and yeah, that is what I'm going for. I wouldn't do a project like that. That was the sort of thing that only a young artist would do, because I really took a lot of shit, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure
But
you did.
it was a little, it was difficult, but but it's probably the work I'm most proud of. Because I really think there was something at stake.
You know what I
Yeah.
find also kind of fascinating, how early on this was, right? Because you were doing like provocative art, right? They kind of beyond the wall, right? It's beyond the wall, right? And it's touching people, and it's getting, so it's almost like Banksy before Banksy in certain ways, which I find super interesting. But can you do the rest of the interview in a British accent since you were there till you're 12?
You know, when you move to the States when you're 12, you lose your accent real fast.
Really?
You get made fun of it for a lot.
Yeah.
I can make like a stupid Cockney accent, but I really can't do a British accent that's any good.
So my question is, so how does it go from, did that stunt basically allow you to make a living from art? What was the process from there?
Yeah, it was around that time that I was able to kind of, because I started to get a fair amount of attention. And I did one of the cool things that happened with the Tupac thing is that this photographer, a guy named Prescott McDonald, he lived in Brooklyn, and he was like a real legitimate hip hop photographer. He had photographed 50 Cent for The Source, members of the Outlaws, if I remember correctly, other rappers too. And he found me and he kind of volunteered to help me with some photography. So
was he getting your messaging, like, or was he just like, oh, this is fun? I mean,
no, I think he got it, because
Yeah.
when people would see the stuff, they would often email me or comment in the blog, and I would address all of the emails and comments. And unless I did also get a lot of comments from like skinheads, and they would call me like a racial traitor, and I wouldn't really bother with them.
Right, yeah.
But like the
Yeah.
hip hop fans, I would try to explain my position, and almost always, once they understood what I was doing, they thought it was really cool and kind of on the nose. But
Yeah.
I didn't want how I presented it to be like too didactic, because I thought that would undermine the point of it. Because if you weren't sort of shocked by it, I don't think
Yeah.
it would have been very effective.
Absolutely.
But to Led's question, I did sell some of those photographs a little bit after the fact, but when I did that, attention started to come to me, and I started to sell the hip hop paintings. And by the time, so this project happened in 03, and I think by mid 04, I was able to make enough money that I was able to quit my various
Side
jobs
right.
working for artists and PAing on commercials and stuff like that. And I wasn't making tons of money, and I've never made tons of money, but I was making enough money that I didn't need to work like an honest job. I could kind of do what I wanted to do. So yeah, I was lucky for
Yeah,
that.
cheers to
And
that.
I
True
managed to
wealth.
keep
I
it.
mean, as an
it going.
economist, that's true wealth, right? Like
Yeah.
you could probably speak to that.
Yeah, cheers to that, right? So that means you have 20 plus years now of doing art. You know what I mean? That's a fucking
Yeah,
accomplishment and a
and-
half in New York City. Like, beautiful.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. It is an accomplishment. Like, it's just tough to keep on going. But when people ask me about career aspirations, my only career aspiration is I can do this until I die. That's all. I don't need to be particularly famous or celebrated or anything like that. Of course, I'm certainly not against it. But really, I get up every day. I'm excited to get out of bed every day. I go and I do what I love. And it's not that there aren't frustrations in my life. There are plenty of them, but the fact that I don't have to sell my time to someone else is just the greatest gift,
That's a gift and a half. Because it is funny because we were just having the conversation, my wife and I, but that's what it is, right? We're giving our time to they decide it's X amount per hour, right? And again, it's funny because art, I have a daughter, my youngest is an artist. You devote hours upon hours to your work, you know what I mean? And you don't quantify, which is beautiful. And the fact that you can live in New York City, kudos to you, brother. Kudos.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If I was to total up the hours I've spent on art in my life, and I was to divide the money I've made by the number of hours, I'm making minimum wage,
wage,
but I
yeah.
really don't give a shit.
But you know what I love about your art, though? Like, again, is something that now I see that, like, not, all that Tupac stuff makes sense now. Like, it makes sense for what your art was, because your art has always been. When we first met, right, you reached out to me about the beer event, right? Do you remember what beer I have? Let's see if you remember.
Yeah, it was purple. It kind of had like a New Orleans theme
it was
something like
a beat
that.
of purple haze. It was a beat of purple haze. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I loved about that, so Octavio, he reached out to a bunch of different people, and you picked the beer, and then I went to his studio and we chopped it up, and it was beautiful because that's art that goes beyond just something on the wall, and I think that's really amazing. And kudos, because you were the Uptown Art Show poster winner this year. which is really
I was,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. I in recent years I've started to do iPad drawings. Like, I got Procreate on my iPad maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I've really fallen in love with it. And yeah, and it was really cool to get I've entered the poster contest before, but like I tried just to use old paintings of mine that didn't work very well. But now that I can like really like make an image quickly on it's not that quick, but something that would take me weeks to paint, I can make in a couple days on the iPad. And yeah, such an honor. And so I'm trying to be more involved with with the Northern Manhattan Artists Alliance, because I think it's a really important thing that you guys are doing. So artists, they need a lot of help, because as you know, and as your daughter will find out, it's not an easy thing to make this into a career, and you need a network and a community behind you to support you. That's the most. It's in some ways more important than the work you're making.
Yeah.
Is to have that community and that network that supports you.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because this year with Noma, I was also an honoree, so I feel like there's another bond between you and I. You know what I mean? But you're right about with Noma. What makes Noma and the resources, but also the young artists can see an artist like yourself. Right? And they can see, yeah, Tom is doing it. Look at how he's been doing it. Look, so I think you're an inspiration to a lot of those younger artists as well.
Led, I think now it's time to take a short pause so that we can pay some of the bills. We are lucky to have a great sponsor, 181 Cabrini. It's our neighborhood bistro. Both Led and I are just steps away from 181 Cabrini, and we love it. 181 Cabrini is located right there on that corner of 181 and Cabrini, just steps away.
181 and Cabrini.
Just steps away from the bridge. So, yeah, I love it. Led, you and I were there the other night.
Yeah, and we also met there for the first time. You and I, the first time we met, we had like lunch there, and it's my local bar now. Like, since you and I both live like right around. It's my local bar. I spend a lot of time there. James Lee, the owner, is just an incredible restaurateur. Right, I think he's a great guy. He's super funny, but like the food is on point. So please hit up 181 Cabrini. It is really one of my favorite spots. 181 Cabrini, pull up. That's my spot. Show them love and tip well.
But how did you become a Knicks art influencer? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
it's funny because in recent years, when people ask me what I do, I usually go to, I'm a semi-professional Knicks fan.
Like, there's Spike, and then I'm over here.
Yeah, I'm a few notches down from Spike. But I did sell him a painting recently.
What?
So that was
really
cool.
That's so cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, very quickly, there used to be a little art gallery at Slam Magazine in Long Island City. What had happened is that they have a space there that's an upstairs office, and there was a storefront of their building, and for a while they were using it to fulfill their merch operation. But that they started to outsource to some other company, and they had this space, and so they turned the ground floor into an art gallery. I think it's actually now closed, but they did a show about the Knicks, like I guess about a year ago, and so I made a painting of Spike, and so Spike came to the show. I wasn't there, so I didn't get to meet him.
Wow!
But he bought my painting, which of course is like a massive career highlight.
That's fucking wonderful.
Yeah.
Not only
what?
That's amazing.
Yeah, but like Spike is probably my all-time favorite director. He Got Game, particularly, is a movie that I've watched like thousands of times. I love
Do the Right Thing.
Sorry.
Do the Right Thing is amazing.
Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
And the new one that's based on the Kurosawa movie. I'm forgetting the name, but with Denzel.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it. It just came out.
Yeah. I think it's a very good movie. I love that movie. Anyway, but so back to becoming a kind of a semi-professional Knicks fan. Over the years, I've made a lot of paintings of Knicks players just because I paint about New York City, and I've been a big Knicks fan since the early 90s. But a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years back, there was an art gallery down the Lower East Side called My Pet Ram, and the guy Marcello Ricci, who runs the place, is a big basketball fan. He's actually a Lakers fan, but he wanted to do a show during the playoffs about basketball. And so he asked me if I'd make a painting. And of course I wanted to. So I made a painting of Clyde. And luckily for me, someone bought that thing pretty quickly, but then it ended up getting on Knicks Twitter, which is a pretty active little, corner of Twitter. And another guy who's not really an art collector, but like a big Knicks fan, saw it, and he wanted to buy it, but it wasn't available. So he got in touch with me and he asked me if I would do a commission. And it turns out this guy has 3 kids, and he's named them their middle names after like the 3 great Knicks of the 1972 team. So their middle names are Reed, Monroe, and Frazier.
Wow,
the 3 kids.
That's crazy.
And so yeah, pretty crazy. And so he asked me to make a painting of the players. And of course I wanted to do that, not only because I was going to get paid, but I would have made that painting without getting paid, you know?
Right.
So I made the painting, and it turns out this guy's a season ticket holder, right? And so if you're a season ticket holder, you have like an agent assigned to you by Madison Square Garden. And I guess he told the ticket agent, lady or guy or whatever, about the painting, and she told Madison Square Garden network about this thing. And if you watch Knicks games, you probably are aware that they do these little commercial spots where they kind of profile sort of crazy Knicks fans, like maybe like a guy who drives the A train. He always makes announcements when he goes through Madison Square Garden station about who the Knicks are playing, or some guy who might have gotten a Knicks tattoo or whatever it is. And so they sent a film crew over to this guy's place. He lives out in Long Island, and so that they're filming the kids, and they film him and his wife by the painting, and they ask him like, who made this painting? And he says, this guy Tom Sanford. And it's like, oh, we should probably go and find Tom Sanford. And so they came to my studio, and I had a few Knicks paintings there. So they made a commercial about me, and around the same time, Ewing Athletic, Patrick Ewing's old sneaker company, became aware of some of my older Knicks, or my older Patrick paintings, and they wanted to do a sneaker. And so just like all these little Knicks things started to happen. And I kind of decided I should lean into this because the one thing I really like is kind of getting outside of the art world and making my art operate inside of like a real culture. And the Knicks fandom is, in my opinion, a real organic culture.
Facts.
Where people like, when there's a big party on 7th Avenue after a game, it's not the Knicks organizing that. That's the fans, and Knicks fans, they have to be pretty dedicated to stick with this team after all the bad seasons we've had. And so there's this real grassroots love that I think is like the beating heart of New York City. Like, to me, the Knicks are the most New York of all teams.
Right.
When
you
the
just look
Knicks
at the
are
Knicks
winning,
fan base.
is
It
a
looks
whole
a lot
different
more
energy.
like the city than any other fan base, in my opinion. Just like the people who like the Knicks, it's all races, colors, and creeds, and their dedication to the team is phenomenal. And it just so happened that I started doing this. Like, it was before Jalen ended up on the Knicks, but Randall was already on the team, so we were on a kind of upswing,
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was a really good time to making Knicks art because people are real interested, and so it just has led to a lot of opportunities. And also my son, he's 12 years old now, but at the time when this started, he was like 7 or 8. And he loves to play basketball. And I love to play basketball, but I suck at basketball. I was a high school wrestler. So like I can just basically rebound and foul people. That's all I can do on the court. But Simon, he's kind of nice. He's got a little handle. He can shoot a little. But he's never been interested in art, but he's really interested in basketball. So we could kind of have this thing together where, like I occasionally I get to do some art for I did some art for John Starks. And so I brought Simon along and he got to meet John Starks. And I'm going to be in the upcoming Clyde Frazier documentary made by Mike Tolan, the guy.
That's so cool.
The guy who did the Jordan, Last Dance stuff. And so Simon came and he got to hang out with, Simon's like a young point guard. He got to hang out with debatably New York's greatest point guard. Jalen is going to make a case for becoming that greatest point guard. But for now, at least until Jalen gets a couple titles, Clyde's still our greatest point guard.
Right.
Anyway, so it allowed me to have this thing that I really love. I love to make art about, and I love to involve my son in. And so it just works on so many levels for me. And frankly, if you're going out and you're socializing the art world, people just talk about real estate and complain about the art market. I don't want to do that. I want to talk about the fucking Knicks, you know?
Yeah.
So I like to be in the Knicks world more than the art world,
Yeah, it just speaks to the authenticity that you bring to your work, and I think that me and Led, I think I've talked to you, Led, about authenticity because I also think that you bring authenticity to what you do, and I think that's what makes you so successful, Uptown, Led, and I think that's what also is so positive in the work that you do, Tom, because authenticity goes a long way. If you weren't bringing the love for what you're trying to do, people would see right through it. But it's impossible not to see the love that you bring to the work that you do. And I do think that you got lucky with this Knicks team because not only are they on the upswing, but they're so dynamic. I mean, look at Jalen and his, the movement that happens with his hair and his braids. And look at Hart, like the way his facial expressions at every game are like hilarious. The guy is like a canvas on his own, and Carl Anthony
he
Towns,
has no
he's
filter
Dominican.
I'm so glad that we have a Dominican player on the team. It's like I was a little upset when we lost Dante in particular.
Me too.
Yes,
in that trade. But I think Cat needs to be a Knick.
I agree.
I
agree.
I love it if I'd like to have I love Julius too, and I think that he was a great Knick in the beginning of this run. I think he should get more credit than he does for the turnaround of the Knicks.
Yeah.
He wore his heart in his sleeve, and he sometimes alienated the fans because he was a little too emotional. But yeah, like having Cat on this team, and one of the cool things is, my son sometimes works out at a basketball practice on the weekends at Bloomingdale School down on 105th Street. This program called Make a Play, and Cat, when he was like 13, he was going to Make a Play.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so Simon gets to that's incredibly empowering for a kid, like knowing like I'm playing on the same court that these guys played on, like I should take myself seriously, Keon Anthony had played at Make a Play too. It's just cool to be in the basketball culture of New York.
Walking in the footsteps,
I can take Simon over to the Rucker and we can watch like Rucker games right here, we don't get up to Dykeman as much because that's a little
further
trip
down.
for me.
Further up. Yep. And let me ask you a question. How did the t-shirts thing? Because like the t-shirts are moving, man. I love the artwork. I love how on social you guys marry like the artwork with hip hop. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I'm actually wearing one of this is like probably my most popular t-shirt.
I love that one.
So this is a thing called Bacher back pages, like Knickerbocker back pages, and it's this guy Stephen Delakian who he's lived up in Inwood for years. He's this incredible artist in his own right, who I guess maybe like 5 or so years ago, what happened with Stephen was he was thinking like I'm playing way too much time playing like 2K and I want to be an artist. So he decided to teach himself Photoshop and other art, softwares. And during the pandemic, he started to make like posts on Instagram after each Knicks game. And initially they were like the back pages of the tabloids. He'd do like a spoof back page about what happened in the game, sort of like The Onion meets the Daily News or something like that. And so it would be like some jokey headline about like who scored or like what player got, I don't know, got a facial or whatever it was. But then people started to say to him, his comment, you should make these into t-shirts. And so he was selling some t-shirts, but then he wanted to have some more artists involved to have a broader range of what he could do. And also Stephen, he can draw a little bit now. He's been working on it, but he's more of a photo collage guy. And so he was like flipping photo album covers. Like he might take like a Jay-Z album cover and make it into a JB, like Jalen Brunson album cover or something like that. But he had some ideas for things that needed to be drawn. And so initially he wanted to do a version of the Action Bronson Rare Chandeliers cover for the Knicks Cavs series, I guess the first Knicks Cavs series a few years ago, where we ended up beating them. And so he asked me, because he'd see me on the Knicks commercials and he'd see my paintings, if I'd be interested in doing it. I was like, absolutely, this sounds great. And so I made this Smoked Cavaliers t-shirt with him, and it did pretty well. I don't know, we sold maybe a couple hundred t-shirts or something like that. And that was really great. But then in the next season, he came up. This was his idea, Captain Clutch.
Love that.
You hear Captain Clutch. All the radio announcers talk about it all the time. It's Stephen Delakian. It's him.
Wow.
And so Stephen was like, "We're gonna make Captain Clutch, but we're gonna do it like Captain Crunch. And so can you do like a version of the Captain Crunch cereal box?" And so I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. This is a great idea." And I made that. And at the time, Steven was doing most of the font stuff on my illustrations. Now I've gotten better at fonts. So he sometimes does the fonts on mine, but sometimes I can do them myself. And so I made this, and this one really popped off. I think it's our all-time highest selling shirt, but we've had a lot of really popular Knicks t-shirts. And anytime you go to a game or even watch on TV, you're going to see people like sitting by the court wearing our t-shirts, which is like, just blows our mind.
Yeah, for sure.
And Pat has bought like 19 of our shirts. Leon Rose has bought actually his daughter has bought our shirts. Members of the Brunson family have bought our shirts.
That's so cool.
So we've never officially worked with the Knicks, and for like intellectual property reasons, because all of this stuff, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but none of this stuff is licensed at all. But I think the Knicks are smart enough to realize that having an organic
fandom,
fan culture,
yeah, for real,
is valuable, And so if we were like really making tons of money, I'm sure we get the cease and desist, but it's still kind of small potatoes in the scheme of things. We do sell a lot of shirts, but it's not like NBA money.
Right. But I'm blown away by how prolific you are, though. It's like the game is over, and then you got artwork for, like, how do you do that? Like, I mean, like, the game's over. I'm like, oh shit, how did Tom do that? Like, how you turning it around so fast?
What I have to do, because my stuff takes a little while to make. Like, it probably took me like 2 days to make this illustration. So I've got to try to predict things. So if we have like a playoff series coming up against Boston, I don't know if you remember, but I made that flip of the Liquid Swords cover.
I love that.
Liquid Swords.
Yeah.
So I made that way in advance, because we knew that season that if we were going to go anywhere, we had to go through Boston. So we might as well make something about Boston. Or like I might make one about, I made like a one about, so last season during the Indiana series, I made a wrestling poster one that was Brunson choking out Tyrese Halliburton, because in game one, Tyrese did that Reggie Miller choke thing. So I was like, fuck that. We gotta get that choke back from him.
That's right.
So I made that, and we sat on it for a couple games, and we dropped it after we got a win against them. Of course, that series didn't end up going our way. But so I have to go in and do things in advance. So this year, like, I made like a Garbage Pail Kid version of Deuce McBride, like dropping deuces, which that one, it's kind of specific to people our age, because younger people don't really know about Garbage Pail Kids.
Right.
But that one kind of works with older people. And I got like a Mitchell Robinson one that's kind of like, I won't talk about it too much, but it's kind of in the pipeline. And so if Mitch ever has a decent game, we can drop that, And we've got some ideas of stuff I want to get done leading into the All-Star break. But Steven is different. Steven, he can work a little faster than me. So and also he's like a night owl. Like, I wake up very early in the morning. I get up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and my best hours are like before my kids wake up. But Steven is really good at working late at night. So after the game, he'll hone in on what like the storyline is, and he'll spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it takes him, to make something that he can drop that night or the morning after.
Gotcha.
And the poor guy, like, he just busts his ass, because Steven also, he's actually a professional photo illustrator. And so he's just working his ass off, the poor guy.
I love the Brunisher
he's a
t-shirt.
genius.
I love the Brunisher t-shirt. Like, I bought one. Yeah,
Thanks. That's one I did.
yeah, I bought that.
Yeah, we've been doing some comic book ones.
So where can people go to get these t-shirts?
Well, they should follow Bacher Back Pages on Instagram, and there's a link to the shop there. And so you can order them online, and they sometimes take a little while to fulfill. We use a third-party fulfillment company, but we also do pop-ups. So, like, when we get to, like, critical times in the season, like, for instance, during the playoffs, things are happening. We release new shirts and people want to wear them to the games. So it's important to be able to get them, because sometimes when you take when you order them online, if there's a big backup with a lot of orders, it sometimes takes 2, 3, 4 weeks for the shirt to show up. But we want our fans to be able to, like, wear them to the game. So there's this place down on Orchard Street, which is called Nowadays Creative Labs. And we became friendly with this guy, Harvey, who runs the place. And he's a really cool guy and lets us just take over the store and do pop-ups. And they have what's called a DTG, or actually they have several DTG printers, which are printers that just print directly to a t-shirt. So we can print to order as people come in. So someone comes in, they say, like, oh, I want the Brunisher, or I want the Nova Knicks t-shirt, or like the Josh Hart Milkman t-shirt, or whatever it is. And they pick out the blanks, like the kind of t-shirt they want, because Harvey stocks like some high-end t-shirts or some or some more mid-range t-shirts. And then, they pick out their design, and we can print it for them on the spot, and, they can go from there to the game.
That's awesome.
It's a whole world. It's a whole economy.
Pages, or if you follow me, Uberkunst, UBERKUNST, we announced this stuff on our Instagrams. We got to build out our TikTok, frankly, but I think we do it there too a little bit.
Nice.
But yeah, Instagram, Bacher Back Pages is the place to go.
That's awesome.
And come to our events. And we also collaborate with some of, like, the Knicks content creators, like the Knicks OmniFan girls are great friends of ours. And sometimes when they do a pop-up like Knicks party, we'll come and we'll sell some t-shirts. We also collaborated with CP the franchise, KFTV, which is probably the biggest like Knicks content platform that's like fan created these days. And so, we do pop-ups at their watch parties, so we just try to, like, be involved in the culture. And, it just adds another thing that people can do when they come to a Knicks party, is they can take a look at our stuff and talk to us about the Knicks, and, maybe buy a shirt.
Yeah, it's funny because with fucking Trump, at least we have the Knicks. You know what I mean? Like, at least we have the Knicks. You know what I'm saying? Like, is this our year? What do you think, Tom? Is this our year?
OKC is really good. They're a really good team, but I think it's our year. I think we can do it. I think we're coming out of the East, and, a 7-game series, injuries, you never know what happens. And I would never bet against Jalen Brunson.
Never.
That man is incredible,
Never.
Yeah,
and as a father of a kid who plays basketball, who doesn't have any superhuman athletic gifts, I love to be able to point to Jalen, because Jalen is the best point guard in the league. And it's not because he's the fastest or the most gifted. It's because he's the smartest player on the court, and and he works the hardest, and his footwork is impeccable, as they say. He just shows kids, and he never does the wrong thing. He always says the right thing.
Yep.
He's always gracious. He's a gentleman, but he's a fierce competitor.
And he's also super small. He's super small, right? Like, but he's not scared, and he uses his body in a way that's very interesting.
Yeah, no, he's strong, but you can tell he is strong as hell.
Yep.
He's a tough motherfucker.
Yep.
And he recognizes that it takes the work, that it's the work. I think that's his catchphrase, that the magic is in the work. So, I mean, he knows that he has to work hard, and he has to practice, and he has to make sure that he's doing. Now, we're coming up on time almost, so I would
just say that's the exact same advice I would give to a young artist. When kids used to ask me, like, I did teach a little bit at college level for a few years, maybe a 10, 15 years back. When they would ask me, like, advice, I always told them the most important thing I did for becoming a professional artist was being a high school wrestler, because you learn to work hard, and you learn to be humiliated and to lose. because you're going to lose a lot in art and you're going to be humiliated and it's not glamorous. You got to be willing to put in the work and you got to take your licks. And Jalen knows that, and any artist who sticks with it knows that. But anyway, sorry.
No, I love that.
No,
I
that's
think
good.
you're 100% right.
I want to give you a chance to talk about, before we start to wrap things up here, I want to give you a chance to talk about what's next. I know that you're doing stuff in the community. I know you were working with a local bit of paddle. What's that about? Like, what's
well, yeah, I've been doing a fair amount of commissions. I like doing commissions because I like money. But
money's good.
There's a new Padel is how they pronounce it, club that's opened up, in the next to the Mink building down on 126. You know where that halal chicken place is, where they slaughter the chickens for you. It's kind of like close to that. But Padel it's a little bit like pickleball, but it's a really cool little facility. And the guys who run that found my work because I have a painting at the Bo's Bagels 16th Street, which I lend to them for free bagels. I love Bo's Bagels. And so they give me all the bagels I want. Anyway, so the guys, Evan Brown, he saw my painting there. It's a painting of Ice Spice. And he asked me if I might be interested in doing some work with them. And so we're working out the details, but I'm going to make some art for their club.
That's cool.
I just finished a commission painting for the new Joe's Pizza location, which is down. It's going to be down in Times Square next to. They already have one in Times Square, but they do so much business. They're opening up another store next to it. So I just finished that. I want to do a show of Knicks art before the season ends, but I keep on having things come up that like commission paintings and things like that, which I kind of need to do because. You guys are both fathers. The responsibilities of a family, and so and like Bushwick Bill said, I ain't with being broke.
Facts. You can't be broke. You can't be broke. You got too much responsibility.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Tom, I gotta ask you as a hip hop head, man. Like, who's your favorite MC? Favorite MC in your favorite group?
Oh man, that's tough. And I'm a '90s guy. And who would I say is my favorite MC of all time? Actually, who my favorite MC is who's not a New York guy is Andre Nicotina from Oakland. You know that guy?
I've never even heard of that. Andre...
You got to check out Andre Nicotina. I love Dre Dog, Andre Nicotina. But as far as New Yorkers go, obviously Big L. I love Biggie. Big L, yep. Wu-Tang. I guess Capadonna maybe from the Wu-Tang.
Capadonna's your favorite Wu member?
Yeah, I think
over
so.
Ghostface, like Method Man.
I like Ghostface. I love Ghostface. Yeah, I love Ghostface. I love them all. But I maybe this is an obvious answer, but the Illmatic album is probably like my favorite. Love it. Single album. Back in the early aughts, like I would always be like a Nas guy as opposed to a Jay-Z guy.
Me too.
I just felt like he felt like a little more authentic to me.
Yeah.
Not that I dislike Jay-Z. I think he's a great rapper, but I think Nas is a little more interesting to me. But I love a lot of Jay-Z's stuff. Who else? Who I was just in Miami for the art fair, and I'm at this party, and I'm walking through it. And I'm wearing this great Knicks hat that great Yankee hat I picked up recently. It was like a Day of the Dead hat that had all the skulls all around it.
Okay.
And the guy who's like the hype man for the DJ, he's like, yo, and he's on the mic. He's like, yo, I love your hat. Someone's bringing some style to this thing. And I'm like, yeah, thank you.
That's cool.
And he's like, but it should be a Mets hat. And I'm like, no, not Mets. I'm Uptown, But then. I didn't recognize him, but then 5 minutes later, Pop Goes the Weasel comes on, or maybe it was Gasface or something, but it was fucking MC Search.
Whoa!
Yes,
something's going on with him. He's all over social lately. He's doing.
Since seeing that, I've noticed that he is. But that's my way of saying that. Of course, like Zev Love X, MF Doom was one of my favorites.
Yeah, MF Doom. What about De La? Do you go?
I love De La, of course, and I love Tribe as well. I love all that positive stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna this is a little secret, and I hope I'm not going to tell you exactly what we're doing, but we're definitely doing a tribe flip. It's going to be what we anticipate being one of our biggest shirts this year.
Ooh.
But we're going to hold on to that for maybe All-Star or something.
Okay, you heard it here
and
first.
We can't forget KRS. We can't forget KRS either.
Oh yeah,
That's
sure.
We can't not mention him.
Yep. Yeah. And I being from Westchester, I've always had a soft spot for DMX and for
the Locks and Jadakiss.
who else?
Jadakiss,
right?
right?
Well, definitely DMX.
Yeah,
but,
Jadakiss too. Jadakiss is from Yonkers, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Both of them.
Well, Tom, thank you so much, brother, for being on the show. This has been such an excellent show. I learned so much, and you're so positive, and you represent Uptown very well. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, I did. Well, thank you guys, and as to you, I'm so honored to be like a honorary. I think of myself as a real New Yorker, although I've only lived up here for 30 years.
That's a long time. You're a New Yorker.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's been members of my family on this island of Manhattan since about 1650. So I think I'm a real New Yorker.
Yes, sir.
I think
yes,
you
sir.
are too.
Yes,
I think
sir.
you are. Absolutely. Thank you very
Tom.
much.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, guys.
I'll talk to you later.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Uptown Voices, brought to you by 181 Cabrini, your neighborhood bistro just steps away from the North Walk of the George Washington Bridge. Use the code Uptown Voices Season 1 for your discount. And to stay up to date on the latest in Uptown, you can follow Uptown Collective on Instagram, Facebook, and X. If you're watching Uptown Voices on YouTube, don't forget to smash the subscribe button and to give us a like. And don't forget, we also need financial contributions from listeners like you to produce, improve, and expand our content. To contribute, please scan the QR code on the screen. Until next time, this has been Uptown Voices.